Hello, today I interview Éva, founder and CEO of Maude, a modern sexual wellness brand that has been redefining the sex essentials industry since 2018. Éva is one of 60 Latinx women who have raised over $1 million in venture capital funding, and as of August 2020, she has raised $4 million in total. We recorded this in December of 2020, and by the time this goes live, Maude will have launched their exclusive collaboration with Urban Outfitters. And even more importantly, back in November of 2020, they announced that actress Dakota Johnson joined Maude as co-creative director and investor, working alongside Éva on the creative direction of the brand, incorporating even more sustainability and mission-driven initiatives. So she tells us more about that as well. I'm very grateful that I got to talk to Éva. She was joyful and funny and very generous with her time in her busy schedule. She tells us more about what drives her, her passion for healthcare, and also how design and her creative eye has played a huge part in her career and more specifically in the success of her brand, Maude. So I can't wait for her to tell you more about that. Well, without further ado, let's get into today's show. Hi, Éva. Thank you for taking the time today. I really look forward to talking to you. So I obviously know a lot about your work and your company, but maybe for those who don't, could you quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Éva Goicochea, and I'm the founder and CEO of Maude, which is a modern sexual wellness company based here in Brooklyn.
Awesome. I'm always curious to know where the name comes from because it's also my first name. And
So the name was a couple things. It was really a play off of the word modern, but then it was also as you know, it's a woman's name that means like strength in battle, and it was also a TV show there was a TV show with a woman named Maude, and she was kind of this trailblazer for reproductive rights. So it had all of these meanings, but really it was about modern.
I love that. And yeah, I found out the meaning behind the name pretty recently, actually. So it's very nice. And yeah, before we get more into Maude and your business, I want to talk about your background because I know that you used to work in healthcare, but you also have a background in marketing. I think you worked with Everline for a few years. So can you walk us through your path?
Yeah, my path, I make jokes that it's really a sandwich because I studied marketing, but then I went and was in healthcare. I became a legislative aide in healthcare in my early 20s. And then I went back to marketing. So it was one after the other. But, and I think foundationally speaking, like healthcare was really being around legislation and sort of patient access and understanding your everyday health was really important in laying the groundwork for what I do now. And then I spent like 10 years in brand working with Adidas, and then I was at Everlane. I was one of the first employees there, and I built out social media and then eventually culture and hiring. So yeah, brand and healthcare, it's weird.
Yeah,
but it makes sense for this.
And now, in addition to working for Maude, I think you're on the board of the Peer Health Exchange. Can you tell us a bit more about this organization?
Yeah, so Peer Health Exchange is an organization that uses peer-to-peer education. So they teach college kids how to go into high schools and educate on sexual wellness and health, substance abuse, and mental health issues. And so a lot of schools don't have that kind of education, and they really bridge the gap for schools that need it. So it's a really exciting program. They have in school in a couple cities, and then they do a lot of online learning too.
Wow. Yeah, that's really amazing. And it does bring us back. I mean, it seems like you have an interest in healthcare and helping people. So how did the idea for Maude come to you, and how long did it take to get it off the ground and everything?
So Maude, I think like any good ideas, was really inspired by it was a conversation in 2015 amongst friends, but all of a sudden felt like lightning because I was like, wait a second, these are the things that I've been working on. All of my experiences are converging into this idea. And so I started working on it in 2015 and moved to New York in 2016 from Los Angeles. And then I raised some money in 2017 and launched the business in 2018. So it was a long process. Here we are essentially 5 years later from idea to where we are now. And it's been really, really amazing to see the growth and for this idea that was a conversation to become a thing.
Yeah, and what is the idea really? Like you have I think an important mission. You're about simplicity, quality, and inclusivity in the personal care industry. So, do you want to tell us a bit more about what the gap that you saw in the market was?
Yeah, I think for me, it's an industry that really affects people in a lot of ways. It affects our educational system, it affects our psychological health, it affects our physical health. Sexual wellness is one of those categories that's so stigmatized and so complicated, and people are embarrassed. And so I thought if I could create this modern brand that really spoke to everybody and sort of destigmatize the category, it would make a much bigger impact than we even know. To me, it's like even bigger than just being a personal care brand. And that's why I am interested in Peer Health Exchange, but that's why I think for me, Maude meant so many other things beyond just making really great product. So yeah, I feel like this is what I'm meant to do.
Yeah. And so I think I remember you launched with 4 products. Was it a difficult conversation at the beginning to maybe like get investment and everything because it's so new in the industry?
Yeah, it was also difficult. I think there's a couple reasons why it was difficult. One is that it is a nascent category. Like it's still really early for change in the category. I think being a female founder was also to sit at the table and talk about sex and, really take a subject seriously, but be faced still with a sort of the fear and the stigma around the topic was there. I have a special guest who's the cat who wants to be in the video.
Oh, so cute. Welcome.
That's Winnie. And then also raising money by having the vibrator as part of the assortment, I think it made investors feel like this was really about vibrators, which it's not. So I was having to sort of explain that that's just a basic. And I wouldn't say that anybody was really uncomfortable in the conversations because of the way that I approach it, but there was definitely a lot of explaining in terms of our approach. And then by the time it was launched, it was easier for people to see what this meant. So we've now raised 3 rounds of funding, and I think people understand what Maude's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And you've launched new products, and I think the overall voice and the messaging and the branding and design, obviously, of not only the brand, but also the products really ground you into your mission. And I was wondering, I know that you at least have a very good eye for design, if not you're a creative. And were you like really involved in the branding or the design of the products or the packagings?
Yeah, so the brand, first of all, I've done graphic design and digital design like forever, and it's not something that it's not something I've definitely had a career in digital design. Like between Everlane and Maude, I was helping people build their websites and I was designing them from scratch. But I think I have always been really right brain, left brain about design. And I actually felt like in this category in particular, design meant so much because through like really accessible, simple design, you could make people feel comfortable. So it was like actually the entire ethos of the company is to have design dismantle stigma. And so yeah, I do have a background in it. I worked with a graphic designer to create like the symbols and the actual logo, but in terms of the brand book, I built the brand book and all of the really what we look and feel like.
Wow, that's really incredible. And like, I know as a designer, having like when I talk to my clients who have a background in design, I'm sure it's incredibly helpful for you to like know all these things and not necessarily depend on someone else when you work on your own brand. And I think something else that I was interested in, so your brand is obviously gender neutral, it's very inclusive, and it talks to all age groups. So did you like sort of, like we said, start with the design side, which then informed the voice and the messaging, or was it all the other way around? Or
so it actually is both. When Maude, in true designer fashion, when Maude came up in 2015, I put up a website, and I had been the concept had come through a couple of designers I had worked with on a watch company that I still have,
Mm-hmm.
and they had an early concept for Maude. And so we put this website up, it was their vision, and then they didn't really want to run with the idea, and I did, and I started working with another designer. So what's interesting is like, it had all of these lives before it got to where it was, but in going through that process, the idea was like, let's create really accessible design to everybody. But what that meant through the process was that we had a lot of colors, and we had like, it was really friendly. And what we realized, while I simultaneously like built sort of the brand pillars and what we stood for, I'm like, wait a second, this needs to be completely pared down in order to feel neutral and universal, and also like age inclusive. And so it was really interesting. That's when we went back to a designer, had him just do the symbols, and then I built everything thereafter. So it was like a build up and then a deconstruct process to get to where we are now, which is interesting. And I don't recommend anyone doing that because it can be expensive if you're working with designers. But I think like it was necessary in really recognizing what we stood for and how that had to come through with the design.
Yes, for sure. I know that when I have an idea, like a strong idea for a design, and I really want it to go through, sometimes, like you said, like I realize that it's not necessarily good for the brand. It's a huge sacrifice to have to kill some of your ideas and everything, but you know that it's the right thing because it's difficult. So yeah, that's a great example. And on that note, I was wondering, did you ever try to think about how to still make the brand a bit exciting and maybe sexy, or is that not at all what you were aiming for?
It's interesting because like I have never thought that the brand should be hyper sexy, because I think that it really, first of all, I would say actually a wider audience is more uncomfortable with the topic of sex than is comfortable. And I think leaning into things that are really sexy essentially is the opposite in some ways of inclusivity, because you're asking people to go to places that they're really uncomfortable. So we try to be, I would say, we don't use this word a lot because I don't feel like it's very gender inclusive, but I would say we're more romantic than we are sexy. You know, and we sort of insinuate rather than just show. And I think that comes through in our visuals, that comes through in the tone of voice, but that has meant that we really resonate with a very large, like a very wide age range, which is interesting. Our customers, 32% of them are over 45. So it's done its job, even if there are times when I'm like, we could be more fun, but it's like, it wouldn't resonate as much.
Yeah. And what you said about inclusivity, obviously sexy is different for everybody. So it would be really hard to, reach out to everybody. And you've compared, I think in previous interviews, you've compared sex to food. So obviously your approach should be, which I think it's such an interesting comparison. And you said that food is not necessarily gendered. I think in some industries it is. People try to associate certain foods with certain genders, but
food is for everybody. And like great food should be accessible, right? And beyond that, what's really interesting, because of the fact that this category is pretty, it's pretty new. It's well, at least like the next chapter of this category is pretty new. And there are only a few players. I think it's really interesting because we often get lumped together in how our approach to sex is or should be. And my whole thing is like, in the food world, there's such a range of diversity, and nobody says, oh, you have a pizza shop, well, they have a fine dining restaurant, and they have this, you should all meet. Like, it doesn't work the same way in food. So I use that as an analogy, not only for the basic necessity for people and also the access that everyone should have, but also because there's diversity in that category. And I think in this category, there needs to be more diversity.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you mentioned that your audience is a lot over 45, you said? Were you surprised of that, or?
Yeah, the main audience is between 25 and 45, but there is a big audience over 45. No, I'm not surprised. I think that that was really the point, was to try to be a brand for like 25 and over, in that other brands have been speaking to sort of a young audience, a dating audience, and not to say that people within 18 to 25 don't want like really beautiful things. I think that it's just more about the kinds of sort of stereotypical values that that other sexual wellness companies, the big legacy players, have been trying to tap into, feel very like college age, you know. So
sure.
it's we're trying to be for a smart adult.
When you write on The Modern, which is a really interesting blog, it's very educational and inclusive. Do you get your ideas from asking your audience or getting feedback, or how do you choose your topics?
Yeah, so at this point, I don't write The Modern. We have a team and they're great. But a lot of it comes from feedback from our customers, sort of what they see working, they try to write more of. We'll do surveys and hear from our customer about what they want to see. And then what's really like, we see what's active on social, because we take a lot of that content and put it on our stories and we see who's swiping up. So I would say that we're definitely informed by the response of the audience. I'm laughing because there are some really funny articles that people like Sex in the Wild West was one of our biggest, you know, stories. It's just really funny. I think people are very curious about history and culture and sort of context around sexual wellness. And that's kind of our take.
I also have to talk about how this year has been, because obviously for a lot of businesses it's been extremely stressful. So yeah, talk to us a bit about how it was for you. I assume that being in the personal care industry was maybe an asset this year. How did it go?
It was really good, but actually going into December of last year, we knew that we were going to be out of product in February, and because there were delays already. And so we went into the year knowing that it was going to be a bit of a stifled year in terms of growth. That has actually not happened. Well, on one hand, we've doubled our business this year, which is great, but actually we probably could have tripled the business if we had product in stock. So it was a bit of a, you know, we were thrilled, but also stuck in some ways because we couldn't get product, you know, from the factories faster. And so that was one thing. I think too, and most people are probably feeling this way, like recognizing what your audience is feeling and trying to navigate that. So in the beginning of COVID, we launched something called Staycation, and it was based off of, we did we did a pop-up last year with 25 other brands, and it was a physical space. And so this year we took that and turned it into a digital space where everybody contributed content to staying at home. And the year felt like a lot of being reactive and nimble and trying to be positive, navigating the team and making sure they felt safe. So we're back in the office. We've been back in the office since May, but we're a really small team, so we're really lucky. But there are times when we felt like a raft. I said to people, like, we felt like a little raft and everything else around you is so unsure. So I'm grateful that the raft stayed afloat. But it was a lot of, you know, this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We're launching a lot of product next year. A lot of it will be sort of extensions of what we have. There will be one new hero product. Yeah, we have a lot happening. We closed with that third round of funding this year. We announced Dakota Johnson as our co-creative director. So it's been a big year.
Yeah, I was also interested in knowing how, so obviously, like, yeah, this year was a huge event for you to bring in Dakota Johnson as a co-creative director, I believe. How long had you been talking about it with her? How did the conversation start? Did she reach out to you? Like, did she know about the products and everything?
So we actually have mutual friends, and weirdly enough, I when I was 5, I was in a movie with her mom.
Oh.
I thought was like kind of interesting. She wasn't born yet, but we just had these funny connections. But I was approached by her team, and I didn't know it was about Dakota. They were like, hey, we have somebody really well known who wants to be a part of Maude. And my original take was like, no way. I'm not interested in celebrities. Maude is a brand for everybody. It's not really about one person. But however, I was like, but if it was Dakota Johnson, I would think about it. And the reason I said that is because I think that Dakota, what she seems like and what she is now that I know, is like, she's a really smart person, but she's also really private. She has a great design sensibility. She just is like a real person. And she takes what she attaches herself to seriously. So that was what I wanted. I didn't want somebody who was like trying to sell more crap on IG on their Instagram, and she never posts. So I was like, this is great. So it made a lot of sense. It was a good partnership.
Yeah, it does look like, sorry. Yeah, it does look like an amazing partnership. And you think like it's going to help you reach new audiences?
Yeah, I think it already has. We got a lot of press around the launch, and you know, it was funny because in the same week another company in sexual wellness announced like their partnership with a famous person. So we were a little bit hesitant to announce it at the same time because we didn't want this to be another like celebrity attached to a product. So all of that is to say that through our partnership, which is a long-term partnership, like we will be able to talk about the things we work on and build together. And that's really exciting, but it's not like a celebrity endorsement. She's going to pop up on the screen and sell you Maude. Like that's not what this is.
Yeah, because her title is co-creative director. So it's not just like an ambassador, which makes it have much more sense. I wanted to ask also, you've really, I think, made a huge change in the industry. Are there other like taboos or myths that you want to burst while you're at it? Like, do you have any specific goals that you?
Yeah, I think one of the main ones, and maybe we'll come out with a campaign at some point, I'm not sure, but is the fact that a vibrator, I think the fact that it gets called a toy is a disservice to adults. It's a disservice to women. It's uncomfortable for partners to bring it in, you know, it feels like an add-on. And for many people, they don't they need a vibrator. And so that's one of them. I think that it's actually like, there's a lot of sexist undertones around sexual wellness devices. I think too, it's like recognizing that you're still lovable at any age and really breaking the stigma around sex being owned by people in their early 20s. In fact, I would say now I know more people in their early 20s who are more serious than people I know in their 30s. Like, I feel like younger audiences are smarter and they care more and they're more interested in like doing good in the world. And so my hope is like we create a company that lifts it up and stops like pandering to stupidity. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think I heard you mention once that it's sometimes hard to do ads on like Facebook or certain platforms because you have a vibrator in your products. So have you had to try to find creative ways to advertise for it in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, we get so much press because we have great relationships with writers, and they also want to write about the topic of sex. So most of our traffic comes through our own channels and comes through press and affiliate. And to be honest with you, even if we could advertise all day on Facebook, I think people are moving away from Facebook in general. Obviously, they're having a lot of problems at the moment, this week in particular. But I think it's not where we find like an audience that cares. So we've always had a diverse marketing mix. And content is a big piece of that.
Yeah, exactly. And which also makes me think like the way you present yourself anyways is not like, you would never use the word toy. Do you think like the design and the aesthetic of the brand that we mentioned earlier, how much do you think it has impacted the success of the brand? Just the design side, I mean.
I think it's impacted the brand more than anything. It's like, it's interesting because we've been asked, well, when are you going to release another toy? But it's like, and we might, I'm not saying we're not going to, but I think that the point is like, we created the vibe to be a basic and to be this like really evergreen item that kind of is like, defines really sex toys in general, where it's like, this is the basic. Everyone should have one of these, you know, in their bag. And not feel ashamed about it. So in some way, like design and that the sort of like the universal like evergreen nature of our design is really the most important thing, so that people feel like it's something that they can, you know, bring into their lives and not feel uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I really love I mean, yeah, like you mentioned your overall mission and the next things that you're gonna change in the industry. Do you think since you started and you mentioned like you had your idea around 2015, do you think it has evolved the industry already, or?
It's interesting because it's like in some ways, even, well, this is funny. If Trojan just released a new line of products called Willa, and if you look on the back of the box, they're like, it's a German woman's name meaning strength. And you're like, okay, like, yeah, it's very obvious, right? But I don't actually think the legacy players have to change or want to change, because if they really changed, they would be risking a lot. So in that way, the broader industry, I don't think has changed. The newer category, like of these startups in the space, are definitely shaking it up, but I don't think that none of them are taking the approach Maude is, where we're creating these essentials. I think they kind of lean into one product or another. So you see like new lube companies, you see new condom companies, new toy companies, but nobody really approaches it as like just essentials.
Yes, and that's definitely what is so unique about Maude. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really appreciate you coming on, and I really can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Where can everybody find you and follow you to see more of your work?
Getmaude.com, GETMAUDE. The company is just called Maude, but we couldn't get Maude.com. So
thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, you too, Maude. Thank you so much.